The massive chamber stretched out like a small city. Thousands of seats rose in perfect circles, each one filled with a different alien species. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime, turning countless languages into something everyone could understand. At the center of it all stood a single human woman. Ambassador Sarah Chen felt very small in that moment. Her black diplomatic uniform looked plain next to the colorful robes and exotic clothing of the other delegates. She had been standing there for 3 hours while species after species gave their reasons why humanity should be cast out from galactic society. The Altarians spoke first. Their leader, a tall blue creature with 4 arms, gestured dramatically as he spoke. "Humans are too violent," he said. "They solve problems with force instead of talking. Just look at their history. Wars, conflicts, destruction everywhere they go." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Sarah wanted to argue, but the rules were clear. Today was for accusations only. Tomorrow, she would have her chance to defend her species. Next came the Centauri delegation. Their representative looked like a giant butterfly with golden wings. "Humans break the ancient ways," she said in a voice like singing wind. "For 10,000 years, we have done things the same way. Trade routes established, territories marked, rules followed. Then humans arrive and want to change everything. They ask too many questions. They challenge our methods." More voices joined in agreement. Sarah noticed some species nodding their strange heads or making whatever gestures meant yes in their cultures. The Vegan Empire's speaker stood up. He was a massive reptile with scales that changed color as he talked. "Humans are unpredictable," he hissed. "We cannot trust a species that acts on emotion instead of logic. They make deals and then want to change them. They promise one thing and do another. This makes them dangerous partners." Hour after hour, the complaints continued. Humans were too curious, asking about things that should be left alone. Humans were too innovative, inventing new technologies that disrupted established industries. Humans were too democratic, letting common people have opinions about important matters. Humans were too individualistic, refusing to follow proper hierarchy and chain of command. Sarah listened to every word, taking careful notes on her tablet. Some of the complaints were fair. Humans did ask a lot of questions. They did challenge old ways of doing things. But was that really such a terrible crime? The worst accusations came from the Andromedans. Their delegate was a creature that looked like living crystal, speaking through vibrations that the translators struggled to convert. "Humans spread chaos wherever they go," the crystal being said. "Look at Kepler Station. For centuries it was a peaceful trading post. Then humans arrived with their ideas about workers' rights and fair wages. Now there are protests and strikes. Order has collapsed." "And what about the Vega colonies?" added another voice. "Humans convinced 3 different species to work together on joint projects. This violated established territorial agreements that had kept peace for millennia." Sarah felt her anger growing, but she kept her face calm. These aliens were describing human achievements as if they were crimes. Kepler Station now had better working conditions and happier workers. The Vega colonies had become the most prosperous sector in that region precisely because different species were sharing knowledge and resources. As the day wore on, a pattern became clear. The accusations weren't really about violence or chaos. They were about change. The galaxy's older species had built a comfortable system where everyone knew their place. Trade flowed through established channels. Technology advanced at a predictable pace. Conflicts were rare because no one challenged the status quo. Then humans arrived and upset everything. They asked why certain species were excluded from trade councils. They wondered why some technologies were restricted to specific groups. They suggested new ways of doing things that might work better than ancient traditions. The final speaker was Archon Zelthar of the Galactic Council itself. He was one of the Eternals, a species so old that they claimed to have been present when the first galactic government was formed. His body was mostly energy contained in a glowing suit, and when he spoke, reality itself seemed to listen. "Honored delegates," Zelthar began. "We have heard many concerns about the human species. But let us be clear about what we are really discussing. This is not about any single action or policy. This is about fundamental compatibility. The chamber fell, silent. Even the constant hum of translation devices seemed quieter. Humans represent a philosophy that cannot coexist with galactic civilization, Zelthar continued. They believe in constant change, endless questioning, and individual freedom above collective stability. These are not evil qualities, but they are incompatible with a galaxy that values order, tradition, and harmony. Sarah felt a chill run through her. This wasn't a trial, it was a divorce proceeding. We have tried to integrate humans into our society for 50 years, Zelthar said. The results speak for themselves. Every human colony becomes a center of unrest. Every human trading post spawns new ideas that disrupt established markets. Every human diplomat asks questions that challenge agreements older than their entire species. The Archon's glow intensified. We do not hate humans. We simply recognize that our ways of life are fundamentally incompatible. It is better for all concerned if we separate peacefully now, before this incompatibility leads to larger conflicts. When Zelthar finished speaking, the chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives turned to their neighbors, speaking in dozens of different languages. Sarah caught fragments through her translator. Finally, necessary step. Should have done this years ago. The voting process took another 2 hours. Each species was called by name, and their representatives stood to announce their decision. Sarah watched the tally board with growing despair, as red lights outnumbered blue ones by an overwhelming margin dot. In the end, 847 species voted to exile humanity from galactic civilization. Only 23 voted against the measure, mostly younger species that humans had helped in recent years. Even some species that had worked closely with humans voted for exile, their representatives looking apologetic but determined. When the voting ended, Archon Zelthar rose one final time. "The Galactic Council has spoken," he announced. "Effective immediately, all formal relationships with Earth and its colonies are severed. Humanity has 30 solar cycles to withdraw all personnel, equipment, and vessels from territories beyond the Sol system. After that time, any human presence outside their home system will be considered an act of aggression." Sarah stood to address the chamber one last time. Her voice was steady, but she could feel tears threatening. "Honored delegates," she said, "I want you to know that humanity accepts this decision. We are disappointed, but we understand. We came to the galaxy hoping to find friends and partners. Instead, we found a civilization that values stability above justice, tradition above progress, and conformity above freedom." Some delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "But we hold no grudge," Sarah continued. "Every species has the right to choose its own path. If you believe the galaxy is better without us, then perhaps you are right. We will return to our home system and find our own way forward." She paused, looking around the vast chamber one last time. "We wish you well, and we hope that someday, when you are ready for the changes that growth requires, you will remember that humanity offered friendship to all who wanted it." With that, Sarah Chen gathered her notes, straightened her uniform, and walked out of the Galactic Council chamber. Behind her, 8 centuries of alien species watched in silence as the youngest member of galactic civilization accepted exile. With dignity and grace, the decision was made. Humanity was alone again. But in the depths of space, traveling back toward the small blue planet that had given birth to an ambitious species, Sarah Chen allowed herself a small smile. The aliens had made one crucial mistake in their calculations. They assumed that exile would weaken humanity. They forgot that humans had spent their entire existence being told what they couldn't do, where they couldn't go, and what they couldn't achieve. Every single time, humans had proved the doubters wrong. The galaxy would soon learn what humanity was capable of when they stopped trying to fit in and started being themselves. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the cargo hauler New Horizon and looked at the message that had just arrived. Like every other human in the galaxy, he had been waiting for Earth's response to the exile vote. The official statement was shorter than he expected. "To all human citizens beyond the Sol system," the message read, The Galactic Council has voted to end all relationships with humanity. We accept their decision with respect and understanding. All humans are hereby ordered to return to the Sol system within 30 days. Pack everything. Take everything. Leave. Nothing behind. We are going home. It was signed by the United Earth government, but Marcus recognized the writing style. President Martinez had written this personally. "Sir?" his first officer asked. "What are your orders?" Marcus looked around. The bridge. His crew of 12 had been running cargo between human and alien worlds for 5 years. They had made good money and built solid relationships with dozens of species. Now it was all ending. "Send word to all human ships in this sector," Marcus said. "We're going home." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on hundreds of human vessels. The message was clear: no arguments, no protests, no attempts to change the Council's mind. Humanity was leaving. On Kepler Station, Chief Administrator Lisa Park received the recall order while sitting in her office overlooking the massive trade hub. Through her window, she could see ships from 20 different species loading and unloading cargo. Human workers moved alongside alien crews, operating the advanced loading systems that had increased the station's efficiency by 40% over the past 3 years. Lisa called her department heads together for an emergency meeting. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said to the mixed group of humans and aliens, "I've just received orders from Earth. All human personnel are being recalled immediately." The room erupted in questions. Yethvar, her Altarian security chief, stood up on his 4 legs. "Administrator Park, this cannot be correct. The station cannot function without human oversight. Our productivity will fall to previous levels." "That's not our problem anymore," Lisa replied sadly. "Earth's orders are clear. We pack up and leave." "But what about our contracts?" asked Dr. Moira Singh, the human head of the medical bay. "We have patients who depend on human-developed treatments. Some of them will die without our care." Lisa felt her heart breaking, but orders were orders. "We'll transfer all medical data to the remaining staff before we go. That's all we can do." Similar conversations happened across the galaxy. On Vega Prime's orbital research station, human scientists prepared to abandon experiments that had taken years to set up. On the mining worlds of Tau Ceti, human engineers shut down operations that supplied rare elements to half the galaxy. On the diplomatic station at Alpha Centauri, human translators and negotiators packed up offices where they had helped resolve conflicts between species who couldn't communicate directly. The evacuation began immediately. Human transport ships that had been carrying cargo suddenly found themselves converted to passenger vessels. Private yachts, military vessels, corporate transports, and even converted cargo haulers joined the massive fleet heading home. But something strange started happening. The humans weren't just taking their people, they were taking everything else too. On Kepler Station, Lisa Park supervised the removal of every piece of human-built equipment. The advanced cargo handling systems came apart piece by piece. The improved life support systems were carefully disconnected. Even the software that ran the station's computer network was purged and replaced with older versions. "You can't take that," Yethvar protested, as human workers began dismantling the main computer core. "That system belongs to the station." "Actually, it doesn't," Lisa said, consulting her tablet. "According to the original installation contracts, all human-built systems remain the property of human corporations unless specifically sold to the station owners. Since the Galactic Council has severed all business relationships with humanity, those contracts are void. We're taking our property home." Similar scenes played out everywhere humans had worked. Research data was encrypted and withdrawn. Manufacturing. Equipment was disassembled and loaded onto ships. Even improvements to alien-built systems were carefully removed, leaving behind older, less efficient versions. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, the evacuation created an immediate crisis. The human-designed extraction systems had increased mineral output by 300% compared to traditional methods. When the humans packed up their equipment and left, the alien crews found themselves unable to operate the old systems effectively. "Wait, pleaded Corthanus, the Centauri overseer. "At least leave us the technical manuals. Show us how to operate the equipment you're leaving behind." Engineer Sarah Rodriguez shook her head. "We're not leaving any equipment behind, and all technical data belongs to human corporations. Sorry, but you voted us out. That means no more access to human technology." The economic impact began almost immediately. Trade routes that had depended on human logistics expertise started experiencing delays. Manufacturing processes that used human innovations slowed to a crawl. Medical treatments developed by human doctors became unavailable as the last human researchers packed up their labs. On the diplomatic station, the situation was even more complex. Ambassador Chen had been replaced by a series of human diplomats who were now tasked with managing the withdrawal. They found themselves dealing with desperate pleas from species who were just beginning to understand what they were losing. "Surely we can work out some kind of arrangement," suggested the Andromedan representative. "Perhaps a limited trade agreement? Cultural exchange programs?" "I'm sorry," replied Ambassador Torres, Sarah Chen's replacement. "The council vote was very clear. No formal relationships of any kind. You made your choice." "But what about the peace treaty between the Rigelians and the Altarians? Your people helped negotiate that agreement." "The treaty will remain in effect," Torres said, "but any future disputes will need to be resolved without human mediation." The Andromedan's crystalline form flickered with what humans had learned was anxiety. "But our species can barely communicate directly. Humans were the only translators who understood both our linguistic patterns and their emotional contexts." Torres felt sympathy for the alien, but his orders were clear. "You'll have to find another solution." As the evacuation continued, reports began reaching Earth about the wider consequences. Species that had relied on human-mediated trade were finding it difficult to work with each other directly. Research projects that had depended on human innovation were grinding to a halt. Even simple things like station maintenance were becoming problems as human-trained workers took their knowledge home. President Martinez read each report carefully. His advisors were divided about humanity's response to the exile. "We should offer to help with the transition," suggested Secretary of State Williams. "Show them we're the reasonable ones in this situation." "Absolutely not," countered Defense Secretary Harrison. "They kicked us out. They can deal with the consequences." Martinez made his decision based on a simple principle: respect. The Galactic Council made their choice based on what they thought was best for their civilization. We need to respect that choice completely. No half measures, no special deals, no gradual withdrawal. We leave cleanly and completely. The exodus took exactly 28 days. The largest logistical operation in human history moved over 50 million people and their equipment across hundreds of light years. Not a single human was left behind. Not a single piece of human technology remained in alien hands. As the last human ships crossed into the Sol system, they were met by a sight that took their breath away. Earth's orbital space had been transformed. Massive construction projects stretched from Mercury's orbit to beyond Jupiter. New space stations, shipyards, and manufacturing facilities were already under construction. Captain Webb docked his ship at one of the new stations and was greeted by Admiral Sarah Chen, who had been promoted after her service as ambassador. "Welcome home, Captain," she said. "I hope you brought more than just passengers." Webb smiled. "We brought detailed scans of every system we visited, complete technical specifications of all alien technologies we worked with, and comprehensive economic data on galactic trade patterns." "Good," Chen replied, "because we have work to do." As Webb looked around the bustling station, he saw humans working alongside beings he didn't recognize. "Admiral, who are those aliens?" Chen's smile widened. "Those aren't aliens, Captain. They're our new neighbors. It turns out we're not the only species the galaxy decided to exclude." 5 years had passed since the last human ship crossed into Sol system space. In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, Archon Zelter reviewed the quarterly reports with growing unease. What he saw in those documents was not what he had expected. The first sign of trouble had appeared just months after the human exodus. Trade efficiency across the galaxy had dropped by 15%. The number seemed small, but when applied to an economy spanning thousands of worlds and hundreds of species, 15% meant trillions of credits in lost productivity. "Explain this to me," Zelthar said to his economic advisor, a centauri named Veltar, whose golden wings fluttered nervously. "The humans had optimized many of our trade routes," Veltar explained. "They used mathematical models we didn't fully understand to predict cargo flows and schedule shipments. Without their systems, we've returned to older, less efficient methods." Zelthar's energy form pulsed with irritation. "Surely other species can learn these methods." "We've tried, Archon, but human mathematics is different. They think in patterns that don't come naturally to most galactic species. Their computers used algorithms that our programmers find difficult to replicate." The economic problems were just the beginning. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy describing similar issues. Kepler Station, once the busiest trade hub in the Outer Rim, had lost 40% of its throughput. The Altarian mining operations in the Tau Ceti system had been forced to shut down 3 major extraction sites when they couldn't maintain the human-built equipment. Even worse were the medical reports. Dr. Yenthara of the Andromedan Crystal Collective presented the most disturbing findings to the Council. "Honored Archon," the crystal being vibrated, "we are facing a health crisis. 17 different plague outbreaks have occurred in sectors where humans previously provided medical support. The death toll now exceeds 2 million beings." Zelthar's glow dimmed. "Surely our own medical knowledge is sufficient?" "For traditional diseases, yes. But humans had developed treatments for conditions that had plagued our species for centuries. The Rigelian bone-wasting disease, Altarian scale rot, even the Centauri wing fungus. All of these were being successfully treated with human-developed medicines. Now those treatments are no longer available. What about the medical data they left behind?" Dr. Yenthara's crystals dimmed to show sadness. "The data was encrypted with human security protocols. We cannot decode it. And even if we could, the manufacturing processes for these medicines require technology that humans took with them." Similar reports came from every sector of galactic society. The Vega research stations had gone dark when their human-maintained equipment failed. 3 different wars had broken out in sectors where human diplomats had been maintaining fragile peace agreements. Pirates had become bolder in regions where human patrol ships were no longer operating. But perhaps the most disturbing development was the complete silence from Sol system itself. "What do our long-range sensors tell us about human activities?" Zelthar asked his intelligence chief, a reptilian vegan named Suskorth. "That is the problem, Archon. We detect nothing. Nothing. No communication signals leaving the system. No ship movements beyond the outer planets. No response to any of our attempts at contact. It's as if the entire human species has simply vanished." This was not entirely true, but it was what the galactic sensors could detect. Humanity had indeed gone quiet, but they were far from inactive. In the space between Jupiter and Saturn, construction projects on a scale never before seen in galactic history were transforming the Sol system. Admiral Chen stood on the command deck of the massive space station that now served as humanity's primary shipyard. Through the observation windows, she could see dozens of vessels under construction, but these weren't the ships that galactic civilization would recognize. "Status report," she requested from her chief engineer, a woman named Dr. Patricia Nakamura. "We're ahead of schedule on all projects," Nakamura replied. "The new FTL communication system is operational. We can now communicate instantly across light years without using the galactic communication network. The manufacturing facilities are producing materials at rates that exceed our best Earth-based factories, and the first of our new exploration vessels will be ready for launch within the month." Chen nodded approvingly. "What about our new friends?" Nakamura's smile widened. "The Wanderers are amazing engineers. Their biotechnology integrates perfectly with our systems. The Outcast's mining expertise has given us access to resources we never knew existed, and the Exile's knowledge of unexplored regions is invaluable." The three species that had joined humanity in their isolation were each remarkable in their own way. The Wanderers were a nomadic species that had been driven from their home world centuries ago for refusing to accept static territorial boundaries. The Outcasts were master miners and builders who had been expelled from galactic society for questioning the environmental impact of traditional extraction methods. The Exiles were explorers who had been banished for venturing into forbidden regions of space. Together, these four species had formed something unprecedented in galactic history. A truly cooperative alliance based on mutual respect and shared innovation, rather than ancient traditions and established hierarchies. "Have we heard anything from the galaxy?" Chen asked. "Multiple attempts at communication," Nakamura replied. "They seem confused by our lack of response. Some species are requesting emergency aid for medical crises. Others want to negotiate limited trade agreements. A few are even hinting that they might reconsider the Exile decision." "And our response?" "Complete silence, as ordered." Chen looked out at the construction work surrounding them. Humans and their new allies worked side by side on projects that would have been impossible under the old galactic system. New technologies were being developed at an unprecedented pace. Art, music, and literature flowed freely between the four species, creating cultural exchanges that enriched everyone involved. Meanwhile, the galaxy that had expelled them was slowly falling apart. The problems weren't limited to economics and medicine. Social unrest was spreading across multiple systems as younger species began questioning why they had voted to exile humanity. The Kepler station riots had started when workers demanded better conditions like the ones they had enjoyed under human management. Similar protests broke out on dozens of worlds. On Alteria Prime, four-armed protesters carried signs written in the simple English they had learned from human traders. "Bring back fairness and humans helped us" were common messages. The Altarian government responded with traditional crowd control methods, but the protests continued. Even worse for galactic stability, some species began forming their own alliances outside the traditional council structure. Young Centauri diplomats started meeting secretly with progressive Rigelians to discuss alternative forms of government. Andromedan scientists shared research with vegan engineers, bypassing the usual bureaucratic channels. The galaxy's leadership watched these developments with growing alarm. The very social changes they had feared from human influence were happening anyway. But without human guidance to keep them peaceful and productive, Archon Zelthar called an emergency session of the Inner Council, the galaxy's most senior leaders. "The situation is becoming untenable," he announced to the gathered representatives. "Our economy is struggling, our medical systems are failing, and social unrest is spreading. Perhaps it is time to reconsider our relationship with humanity." The Altarian representative, General Kethmore, disagreed. "We cannot show weakness now. If we reverse our decision, every species in the galaxy will think they can challenge our authority." "But the practical consequences are severe," argued the Centauri delegate. "My people are dying from diseases that humans could cure. Our trade networks are collapsing. Something must be done." The debate continued for hours, but reached no conclusion. The older species, particularly the Eternals like Zelthar, were reluctant to admit their mistake. The younger species were growing increasingly frustrated with their leader's stubbornness. Finally, Zelthar made a decision. "We will send an official communication to Sol System. We will offer limited re-engagement on specific issues of mutual concern." The message was carefully crafted to appear generous while maintaining galactic dignity. It offered humanity a chance to provide medical aid in exchange for limited trading rights. It suggested cultural exchanges that might benefit both sides. It even hinted that full membership in galactic society might be possible again if humans proved they could integrate properly. The message was transmitted using the galaxy's most powerful communication array. It was sent on all frequencies that humans had previously used. It was repeated daily for a full month. The response from Sol System was the same as always: absolute silence. What the galactic leaders didn't understand was that humanity no longer needed them. The species that had been exiled for being too disruptive, too innovative, and too independent had used those very qualities to build something better than what they had lost. In the depths of the Sol system, 4 species worked together on projects that would reshape their understanding of what civilization could become. They were developing technologies that would make galactic science look primitive. They were creating art that combined the best of multiple cultures. They were building ships that could go places the galaxy had never imagined, and they were preparing for the day when they would return to the stars, not as supplicants seeking acceptance, but as the founders of something entirely new. The galaxy had voted to exile Earth, thinking they were getting rid of a problem. Instead, they had created a solution to problems they didn't even know they had. 10 years after the exile, the Sol system had become something that would have amazed the galaxy's greatest architects. Dr. Patricia Nakamura floated in her environmental suit outside the massive construction that now orbited between Mars and Jupiter. The structure was so large that it had its own gravitational field, pulling in asteroids and space debris to feed its ever-growing mass. Status report on the Genesis project, she spoke into her communication device. All systems operating at peak efficiency, came the reply from her Wanderer counterpart, a being called Flow Between Stars whose liquid form was contained in a specialized worksuit. The bio-neural networks are integrating perfectly with human computational systems. We should have full consciousness emergence within the next solar cycle. Nakamura smiled inside her helmet. The Genesis project was humanity's most ambitious undertaking, a living space station that could think, adapt, and grow on its own. It combined human engineering with Wanderer biotechnology, outcast mining techniques, and Exile navigation systems. Nothing like it had ever existed in galactic history, but Genesis was just one of hundreds of projects transforming human space. Across the system, impossible things were becoming routine. On the moon of Europa, vast underwater cities housed millions of beings from all 4 allied species. The cities were grown rather than built, using Wanderer techniques that shaped living coral into structures stronger than steel. Human families lived side by side with crystalline outcasts, gaseous wanderers, and the energy-based exiles in perfect harmony. In the asteroid belt, mining operations extracted not just minerals but exotic matter that existed in higher dimensions. Outcast miners, who had been expelled from galactic society for their unconventional methods, had taught humans to tap into resources that traditional galactic science claimed were impossible to harvest. Most remarkable of all were the ships being constructed in the orbital yards around Saturn. These vessels looked nothing like traditional galactic designs. They were organic in appearance, with flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to shift and adapt. They moved through space not by burning fuel, but by manipulating the fabric of reality. Itself, Admiral Chen, now promoted to Fleet Commander of the Terra Alliance, stood on the bridge of the flagship, New Dawn. The ship was a perfect example of what 4 species could accomplish when they truly worked together. Its hull was grown from Wanderer biometal, its engines were powered by outcast exotic matter generators, its navigation systems used Exile space-folding technology, and its command structure was based on human organizational principles. Navigation, what's our current position? Chen asked her helm officer, an exile named Whisper in the Void, whose energy form flickered with contentment. We are currently in the Oort cloud, approximately 2 light-years from Sol, Whisper replied through the ship's translation system. Long-range sensors are detecting no galactic presence in this region. Chen nodded. The galaxy still believed that humanity was confined to the inner solar system. They had no idea that human ships could now travel distances that would have taken their vessels months to cover. Any word from our advanced scouts? Yes, Commander, replied her communications officer, a human named Lieutenant Park. Teams 7 through 12 have made contact with 3 new species in the galactic rim regions. All 3 are interested in joining our alliance. This was the most significant development in the Terra Alliance's history. Beyond the edges of known galactic space, they had discovered dozens of species that the Galactic Council had either ignored or actively avoided. Many of these species possessed knowledge and abilities that complemented the Alliance's existing strengths. The first of these new species were the Builders, insect-like creatures who could construct massive structures using only raw materials. and their own biological secretions. The second were the singers, energy beings who could manipulate matter through sound frequencies. The third were the shapers, a collective consciousness that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Each new species brought something unique to the Alliance. More importantly, each had been rejected by galactic civilization for reasons that the Terra Alliance found absurd. The builders had been considered too primitive because they didn't use traditional metalworking techniques. The singers had been deemed dangerous because their abilities couldn't be easily controlled or regulated. The shapers had been ignored entirely because galactic science couldn't figure out how to communicate with a multidimensional consciousness. Prepare a full report for the Alliance Council, Chen ordered. I want detailed analysis of each new species' capabilities and how they might integrate with our existing projects. While the Terra Alliance expanded and evolved, the galaxy that had expelled them continued to decline. The problems that had begun shortly after the human exodus had grown worse with each passing year. On the Galactic Council station, Archon Zelthar reviewed the latest crisis reports with a sense of despair that was unusual for an Eternal. The economic situation had stabilized at a much lower level than before, but social problems were multiplying. The Alteri Prime riots have entered their third month, reported his security chief. Government forces are unable to restore order. The protesters are demanding democratic reforms similar to what they observed on human-administered worlds. What about the Centauri situation? The Centauri Council of Elders has been dissolved. Younger Centauri have established what they call a People's Assembly and are refusing to recognize traditional authority structures. They claim to be following human political models. Zelthar's energy form dimmed with frustration. And the Andromedan Plague? Now affecting 7 systems. Without human medical knowledge, we estimate 40% mortality rates in affected populations. The irony was painful. The galaxy had expelled humanity for being too disruptive, but their absence had created far more disruption than their presence ever had. Worse, the social changes they had feared were happening anyway, but without human guidance to keep them constructive rather than destructive. Have we received any response to our communication attempts? Zelthar asked hopefully. None. Archon, Sol system remains completely silent. What the galactic leadership didn't know was that humanity could hear every message they sent. The Terra Alliance's communication technology was now so advanced that they could monitor galactic communications from anywhere in local space. They simply chose not to respond. In a conference room aboard the New Dawn, the Alliance Council was debating their next move. The council consisted of representatives from all allied species, with decisions made by consensus rather than authority. The galaxy is clearly suffering without us, said Dr. Sarah Rodriguez, now serving as Earth's representative. Perhaps it's time to offer assistance. Flow between stars rippled in disagreement. They chose their path. We should focus on our own development. But millions of beings are dying from diseases we could cure, argued Crystal Song Deep, the outcast representative. Do we not have moral obligations? Whisper in the Void flickered thoughtfully. The question is not whether we should help, but how. Do we return as the same species they expelled, or do we reveal what we have become? 15 years after the Exile, the first Terra Alliance ship appeared in galactic space without warning. It materialized near the plague-stricken world of Alteri 7, not through any known form of faster-than-light travel, but by simply stepping out of what appeared to be folded space itself. The ship was unlike anything in the galactic database. It looked grown rather than built, with smooth curves that seemed to pulse with internal light. It was beautiful in a way that made traditional galactic vessels look crude and mechanical by comparison. On the bridge of the Alterian defense platform, Commander Yethkol stared at his sensors in confusion. "What is that thing?" he asked his crew. "Unknown design," replied his sensor officer. "It's not using any propulsion system we can identify. And the materials, the computer says the hull is impossible. It reads as both living tissue and advanced metal at the same time." "Any response to our hails?" "Yes, sir. They're asking permission to provide medical aid to the planet below. Yethkol hesitated. His people had been dying from the Rigelian plague for months. Traditional galactic medicine had proven useless, but accepting help from an unknown vessel went against all protocols. "Sir," his communications officer said urgently, "they're transmitting medical data. The computer is analyzing it now. Commander, they have a cure for the plague. Not just a treatment, but a complete cure." The decision was easy after that. Within hours, small craft from the mysterious ship were landing at medical facilities across Alteri 7. The beings who emerged wore environmental suits that concealed their identity, but their actions spoke louder than words. The cure they provided didn't just stop the plague. It made the affected population immune to 17 other diseases that had plagued the Alterians for centuries. The medical procedures they demonstrated were so advanced that local doctors could barely understand them. Dr. Kethmara, the planet's chief medical officer, worked alongside the mysterious healers for 3 straight days. "Your techniques are incredible," she told the lead figure whose voice came through a universal translator. "I've never seen anything like this. What species are you?" "We are friends," came the reply. "That is all you need to know for now." Similar incidents began, occurring across the galaxy. Ships of impossible design appeared wherever there were crises. They provided aid without asking for anything in return, then disappeared as mysteriously as they had arrived. On Centauri Prime, massive construction vessels helped rebuild cities destroyed by civil unrest. The new buildings were more beautiful and efficient than anything the Centauri had ever created. On Vega Station, engineering teams repaired systems that had been failing for years, upgrading them with technology that seemed decades ahead of galactic standards. The pattern was always the same. Mysterious benefactors appeared, solved problems that galactic civilization couldn't handle, and vanished before anyone could identify them or demand explanations. In the Galactic Council chambers, the emergency sessions had become daily occurrences. Archon Zelthar reviewed report after report of these interventions with growing amazement and concern. "They've now appeared in 47 different systems," announced his intelligence chief. "Every appearance follows the same pattern. They arrive without warning, provide exactly the help that's needed, and disappear before we can establish meaningful contact." "Any clues to their identity?" Zelthar asked. "The linguistic patterns in their communications suggest familiarity with multiple galactic languages, but their technology is completely unknown. Some of our scientists think they might be from outside our galaxy entirely." Zelthar pondered this possibility. Extragalactic contact had been theoretical for so long that most species had stopped considering it seriously. But what other explanation could there be for such advanced capabilities? "What do they want?" he wondered aloud. "That's the strange part, Archon. They don't seem to want anything. They provide aid and disappear. No trade negotiations, no territorial claims, no demands for recognition or payment." This was perhaps the most puzzling aspect of the entire situation. In galactic history, no species had ever provided assistance without expecting something in return. The idea of pure altruism on such a scale was almost incomprehensible. What the Council didn't realize was that the Terra Alliance was carefully studying galactic society, learning about changes that had occurred during their 15-year absence. The intelligence they gathered was disturbing. In the Alliance Command Center hidden in the Kuiper Belt, Fleet Commander Chen reviewed the latest reports from reconnaissance teams. "The situation is worse than we expected," she told the assembled Council representatives. "Social order is breaking down across multiple sectors. The economic disruption from our departure has created widespread instability, and the medical crises are claiming millions of lives." Flow between stars rippled with concern. "Are we responsible for this suffering?" "No," replied Crystal Song Deep firmly. "They made their choice. We are not obligated to sacrifice ourselves to fix their mistakes." But Dr. Rodriguez disagreed. "We may not be obligated, but we have the power to help. Doesn't that create a moral imperative?" Whisper in the Void flickered thoughtfully. The question is whether helping them now will teach them valuable lessons or simply enable their dependency on others. The debate had been ongoing for months. The Terra Alliance had the capability to solve most of the galaxy's problems quickly and efficiently. Their medical technology could cure diseases that had plagued civilizations for millennia. Their engineering knowledge could rebuild failing infrastructure. Their diplomatic expertise could resolve conflicts that had raged for generations. But intervention carried risks. The Alliance was still significantly outnumbered by galactic civilization. If their true identity became known too early, they might face another exile, or worse, active persecution. The solution came from an unexpected source. Many legs working, the builder representative, had been studying galactic social patterns with the analytical mind of an engineer. The problem, the insectoid creature announced, is not that they lack the ability to solve these problems. The problem is that they lack the will to change their thinking. They still believe that the old ways will work if they just try harder. Root of all stories, attending the meeting through bio-neural link from the Gardener homeworld, agreed. Change must come from within, or it will not last. But sometimes external pressure can catalyze internal transformation. The singer representative created a complex harmony before speaking. We propose a demonstration. Let them see what cooperation and innovation can accomplish. Then let them choose whether to embrace change or cling to stagnation. After extensive debate, the Council approved what they called the Revelation Protocol. The Terra Alliance would gradually reveal their identity, while demonstrating the benefits of their cooperative approach to civilization. Species that proved willing to change would be offered Alliance membership. Those that insisted on maintaining the old ways would be left to their own devices. The first phase began with a simple broadcast transmitted to every inhabited system in the galaxy. The message appeared simultaneously on all communication networks, overriding normal programming with casual ease that demonstrated technological superiority. The figure who appeared in the broadcast was immediately recognizable to anyone who had been alive 15 years earlier. Admiral Sarah Chen, former human ambassador to the Galactic Council, looked directly into the camera and spoke in her clear, calm voice. "Greetings to the species of the galaxy," she began. 15 years ago you voted to exile humanity from galactic civilization. You believed we were too disruptive, too innovative, too unwilling to accept the established order. You were correct. The broadcast was being watched in emergency sessions across the galaxy. In the council chambers, Zelthar's energy form pulsed, with shock and recognition. "We accepted your judgment," Chen continued, "and we returned to our home system. But we did not remain idle. We have spent these years learning, growing, and building something new. We have formed alliances with other species that your civilization rejected or ignored. Together we have created technologies and social systems that surpass anything in galactic history." Images accompanied her words. Vast living cities in space, ships that moved faster than light without engines, beings from dozens of species working together in perfect harmony. "For the past months we have been providing aid to worlds suffering from problems that your traditional methods cannot solve. We have done this not out of obligation, but out of compassion. We have not forgotten that many individuals in your civilization are good people trapped in a system that resists necessary change." The broadcast showed scenes of the mysterious aid missions, now revealed to be Terra Alliance operations. "We are now prepared to offer something that has never before existed in galactic history, a true alternative. Any species, any world, any group that is willing to embrace cooperation over competition, innovation over tradition, and freedom over control is welcome to join the Terra Alliance." The final images showed the incredible scope of what humanity and their allies had accomplished. Entire star systems transformed into gardens of life, technologies that seemed to border on magic, and societies where beings from radically different species worked together as equals. Groups who had grown tired of the endless bureaucracy and stagnation. On Alteri 7, where the first Terra Alliance medical mission had saved millions of lives,
The planetary government called an emergency session. The debate lasted for days, but the conclusion was inevitable. A world that had experienced the benefits of Alliance technology and medical knowledge voted overwhelmingly to request membership in the Terra Alliance. Similar decisions were being made across the galaxy. Younger species, particularly those that had been marginalized by the traditional power structure, began formally requesting Alliance membership. Even some older species found themselves reconsidering their positions as they watched their societies struggle with problems that the Alliance could solve easily. The Galactic Council found itself facing an unprecedented crisis. For the first time in its history, member species were voluntarily leaving to join a competing organization. Traditional authority structures were being challenged not by rebellion, but by the simple appeal of a better alternative. Archon Zelthar called an emergency meeting of the Inner Council. But even that ancient body was divided. Some members wanted to negotiate with the Terra Alliance. Others demanded military action to prevent further defections. A few suggested that the Council itself should consider Alliance membership. "We must face reality," argued the Centauri representative. "Our civilization has stagnated for centuries. These humans and their allies have accomplished in 15 years what we have failed to do in millennia." "They are still too dangerous," countered the Altarian delegate. "Look how quickly they have disrupted our entire social order. This proves we were right to exile them." The debate raged for days while more and more systems declared their intention to join the Terra Alliance. What had begun as a trickle of defections was becoming a flood. On the flagship New Dawn, Commander Chen watched the galactic situation develop with satisfaction but also caution. The Alliance was growing rapidly, but growth brought challenges. Integrating hundreds of new species with different cultures, technologies and social systems would test their cooperative principles to the limit. "Status report on new member integration," she requested from her staff. "Proceeding smoothly for the most part," replied Dr. Rodriguez. "The species that are choosing to join us seem to genuinely embrace our cooperative philosophy. There have been surprisingly few conflicts." "What about resistance from the traditional powers?" "Growing, but not yet organized. Most of the Inner Council species are still debating among themselves. However, intelligence suggests that some hardline factions are considering military intervention." Chen nodded grimly. They had always known this possibility existed. The question was whether the Terra Alliance was strong enough to defend itself and its new members if conflict came. The answer came sooner than expected. 3 months after the Revelation Protocol broadcast, a massive galactic fleet appeared at the edge of Sol system space. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Over 10,000 ships representing dozens of species, all under the command of the Galactic Council's military arm. Admiral Keth Tar of the Altarian Defense Force, serving as fleet commander, broadcast an ultimatum to the Sol system. Surrender immediately and submit to galactic authority, or face the consequences of your rebellion. The Terra Alliance response was swift and decisive. A single ship emerged from the inner system to meet the massive fleet. It was the New Dawn, looking impossibly small against the assembled armada. Admiral Kethtar laughed when he saw the lone vessel approaching. One ship against 10,000? These humans have learned nothing about military reality. His amusement turned to shock when the New Dawn began to change. The ship expanded, its living hull flowing and reshaping itself until it was 10 times its original size. Smaller vessels detached from its structure like cells dividing, until a full fleet of impossible ships faced the Galactic Armada. Galactic Fleet, came Chen's voice over all communication channels. You have entered Terra Alliance space without permission. You will withdraw immediately or face defensive action. We have 10,000 ships, Kethtar replied. You have perhaps 50. Surrender now, and we will be merciful. Chen's response was to demonstrate why numbers didn't always matter. The Terra Alliance ships moved in ways that defied physics as the galactic forces understood it. They seemed to step in and out of normal space at will. Their weapons weren't destructive. Instead, they simply disabled galactic ships by interfacing directly with their computer systems and shutting them down peacefully. Within an hour, the entire galactic fleet was floating dead in space, their crews unharmed but their ships completely inoperative. Galactic Fleet, Chen broadcast. Your vessels will be repaired and returned to you. Your crews will be provided with food, water, and medical attention as needed. But you will remember this day. The Terra Alliance will defend itself and its members from any aggression. We prefer cooperation, but we are prepared for conflict. As rescue ships arrived to tend to the disabled galactic fleet, Chen made one final broadcast to the entire galaxy. The choice remains yours. Join us in building a better future, or continue clinging to a past that no longer serves you. But understand this. We will not be stopped. We will not be silenced. And we will not abandon those who choose to walk with us. The galaxy had voted to exile Earth, thinking they were getting rid of a problem. Instead, they had created the solution to problems they never knew they had. Now, as more and more worlds chose to join the Terra Alliance, it became clear that the future of galactic civilization would be determined not by ancient councils and traditional hierarchies, but by those brave enough to embrace change and cooperation over fear and control. Humanity had indeed chosen to walk its own way, and now the galaxy was learning to walk with them.